joined and had a grand old time. I hope everyone had a fantastic Pride. We are going to be starting with a little bit of fun technical difficulties today. If some of you have seen in the past some of the things that we've gone through to deal with technical difficulties, you might be familiar with this one. But I'll be calling my guests today. We'll have them on screen, but then I'll hold my phone up so that y'all can hear them. So yes, we'll go ahead and get started. But first, let me call them to loop them in. Hi.
Hello.
Just called to loop you in. I'm still going to go ahead and read your bio and things like that, but we'll bring you on screen here in just a sec.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So welcome to episode 36, everyone. I'm actually first going to start by playing a little bit of a video. So if you don't want to give me just a second, I'll bring that up and then we can watch this incredibly talented guest that I have today. Let me bring that on screen.
Gotta be sure and it's gotta be soon and it gotta be larger than life. I need a hero. The hammer falls and crashing and pounding. The rivers surround him and drown out the sound of the song he once heard. La, 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 la. Can I find a woman like that, like Jesse's girl? I wish that I had Jesse's girl. Why can't I find a woman like? Why can't I find a woman like that?
Awesome. So welcome to episode 36. My guest today is a performer and choreographer from Allentown, Pennsylvania, who's been studying theater and dance since they learned to walk and talk. Faye is a recent graduate from Long Island University Post with their BFA in musical theater. While studying at LIU, he received training in Suzuki, Stanislavski, Meisner, Chekhov, and Laban. Fair training in the Suzuki Method, as repurposed by Maria Porter, was particularly formative, giving them a love of physical theater, which has greatly informed their choreography style. Lavender has a deep passion for devised work and collaborative theater because of their belief that every piece of art can benefit from as many different perspectives as possible. Some of their most recent projects include Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Hedwig, Rocky Horror Picture Show as the dance captain, Spring Awakening as choreographer and intimacy director, and devised work on Disconnected. Logan's goal is to make queer, trauma-informed, and consent-informed art, no matter what role they occupy on a project. My incredibly talented guest and I met several years ago, and I am so excited to catch back up with them and hear everything Faye has been up to. So this is Lavender Logan Kelley.
Hello.
Hi. I'm so excited to bring you on screen so people can actually see who I'm talking to.
Hello. It's me.
Yes, I'm so sorry we have to go through these weird technical difficulties for today, but we got you on screen. We're doing the thing. That's what matters.
Yeah, it's all good. I did a full year of theater school on Zoom, so I get it.
No, I understand. I'm with you there. But yeah, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a crazy couple months. I graduated in May. My lease was up, so I moved, and now I'm commuting into the city for work. I'm still based on Long Island as of right now, but I'm looking to move to Brooklyn in August.
Yay!
Yeah, so lots of I feel like I'm in a very transitionary period right now.
Totally, I understand that. And honestly, summer has always felt that way. So I can imagine, especially so now that you're like, okay, well, here's where I'm at for the summer. Let's see what we're doing. So yeah. I totally understand. But I'm happy to hear that you're out on Long Island and near the city still and doing the good stuff. I always like to provide context for people watching, like, how do we know each other? Because I end up interviewing a lot of guests that I went to school with or otherwise. But today is a unique one because we met at the first year of Broadway Con.
We did. We were both waitlisted for a Newsies dance workshop.
Yes, we were listed as like observers. And I distinctly remember you turning to me and being like, there's room on the floor. Do you want to go? And I'm like, yes. And just like that immediate commitment on both our ends. We're like, okay, we're doing this now.
Yeah, and then we just like hung out for the rest of the convention.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, simply because like that was obviously the first year was the year that BroadwayCon got snowed in. So we were all like there for the weekend. So we were like, okay, well, time to find some friends and be like, oh, you're going to this thing next? Okay, I'm going to this thing. Let's do it, you know?
Yeah.
And it was also fun because like I was a freshman in college, but I believe you were just like a sophomore in high school.
Yeah, no, I was like 16.
It's funny. I thought you were so much older, but yeah, no, it was so fun. And it was such a good weekend. And like we ended up like meeting up for more Broadway cons after that. I think like 1 or 2 at least.
Yeah, I think we did the next year, and then I did when I was like doing all my college tours and everything.
Yeah.
Lora's a real one because she let me sleep on her dorm room floor when I
tried to make it as comfortable as possible at least.
No, I remember showing up at like midnight and you were like, absolutely sleep on my floor. I got up at like 7 a.m. the next day to go do some random college audition that I didn't even get into. Like,
you know, you got to do what you got to do. I totally understood, but I was like, yes, absolutely. I have room on my floor. I'll try to make it as comfortable as possible. So like, let's do this, you know?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But it's been so fun to like be able to like set this up and catch up just because we haven't really been able to talk since you started college.
Yeah.
Like we maybe saw each other like when you came to like visit Wagner and like once at like Broadway Flea Market for like 2 minutes. But other than that, we really haven't gotten the chance to like meet up and everything. So I'm so proud of you. I just want to say that because I'm like, I've seen you grow and all that good stuff. So like, and now you're a college graduate. I'm like, what the heck? Time is flown. Absolutely insane.
Well, the feeling is mutual. Like watching you like go and get a whole other degree. Like, oh my goodness, that's insane.
It really was. It really was. And thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But kind of going back to the beginning of things, how did you first get started in theater?
Well, I blame my dad because when I was like 2 years old, he brought home a VHS of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and he played it for me, and I sat completely still through the whole thing. And then when it was over, I said, "Play it again." And it was kind of from then on, I was just obsessed with musicals. I went and I grew up like an hour and a half from Manhattan, so I went and saw my first Broadway show when I was maybe like 3 or 4 years old. I saw like Beauty and the Beast, and then there's a youth theater in my area called Pennsylvania Youth Theater, and I did my first show with them when I was 6. I was a Who in Seussical. And I had already started dancing before that, and it was honestly like I was really lucky in that I really found what I loved and just wanted to do for the rest of my life at like such a young age. It just really it was never really a question for me once I started like being like, what do I want to do with my life? It was like, well, I'm really good at this thing and it makes me happy, so maybe I should just keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny that you like specifically note Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It must be like a father-kid thing because my dad is the one who introduced me to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as well, and like equally obsessed. Yeah. So like I totally get that. But that's so awesome to have that realization at such a young age that you're like, okay, like yeah, this is the thing. Like there's no because there's been a few episodes where some people didn't realize it till like high school. And so like part of this show is I always ask that question of like, what was like your overture moment or like light bulb moment of like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. And for you, it already sounds like that there wasn't necessarily a moment. It was more of just like a general knowing like, oh yeah, this is it. Like there's no other version. Like,
yeah, I literally don't know like what else I would have gone into. Like, I feel like there is an alternate universe where I'm like, you know, a translator at the UN or something crazy like that. But like, I just like ever since I was like a little kid, like my parents could not shut me up. If there was like a group of people in my house, I was gonna like perform for them.
You're like, this is my stage now. Like this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love that so much. You're absolutely a triple threat. And it's so wonderful to see, even like afar from like social media, like how your training and acting, singing, and dancing have like all affected each other and have helped you grow. And so because of that, I want to share your talent as an actor to begin with. So because you shared your reels with me. So I want to share a little bit of your acting stuff. So let me pull that up. Let me actually bring up the right video as well, because don't want to like play your singing video again. As much as like I'm sure everyone would love to see you belt your face off even more, like want to make sure that you get everything else as well.
Put a little ballad on there or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You think that painting I was working on yesterday, that could
Hold
use a little
on.
splash of red up here.
Technical difficulties. Let me make sure that this is working.
That painting I was working
Interesting.
on yesterday.
There we go.
That painting I was working on yesterday, that could use a little splash of red up here near the top. So you dip your brush in the paint and you splash some red. And then a little yellow, then some green over here on the right. You think, okay, I could put a sailboat up there in the sky. And then you have another sip of coffee and you notice the little ceramic vase you were working on the day before yesterday. And you think, I could put some sort of flat, muted, purplish color right there where its stomach bulges out a little bit. And then you see that drawing that fell off that table on the floor down at the other end of your studio, and you just can't help doing a little something to it. Add a picnic table to the landscape. And by the time you finish that, you find yourself at the other end of your studio near the doors out onto the terrace. So you go out onto the terrace and you sit at the little table overlooking the vineyard. Because by then it's time for lunch. That's the life I have in mind. How do you do it? You're so sure of yourself. I am myself, yes. Are you a girl? A boy? Then what? I am that I am. I'm not sure if you're me or somebody entirely different. Do I have to be anything?
Awesome. Hold on. Awesome. Both really amazing pieces. And I'm sure it must be very strange on your end because I don't think that you could hear either one of those. So I'm sure it must be very interesting watching your videos being like, yep, those are my monologues.
Yeah, it's very funny because I can hear it in my head because I've just like watched them so many times to edit for reels and stuff.
Okay, so interesting development.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear you now.
Oh.
Like, through my headphones. I don't know what happened.
Do you want me to hang up?
I guess so. Let's try that.
Okay.
I was like, what is happening?
Oh my god! Yay!
That's so wild. I don't know how that happened, but we're here and it's fine. And if we need to readjust and go back, then we know what to do.
Sounds good.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, so I'm really curious. That first one that you did, is that from a play?
It's from Love Sonnets, Things Women Say by Chuck Mee.
It's gorgeous. And I also, now that you say it was by Chuck Mee, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. I should have
it's very Chuck Mee.
I should have recognized that. He writes some crazy stuff, but like all really amazing stuff. And then the second part was from Disconnected, which I noticed obviously from your bio, that it was a devised piece that you worked on. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was my junior year of college.
Smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It was second semester, so actually, like the night before I filmed that video, I went with vaccine. Basically, we were still doing all online productions, and so I auditioned from P Labs. I was cast in the devised piece, and we had no structure coming in. We had a wonderful director. Her name was Gabrielle Schutz, and she had us come in and just do a bunch of moment work. So we would be like given a prompt or given an element of theatrics that we wanted to highlight, and then just come in and create a moment, either writing text for it or like finding text for it and like creating our own script. And then from that moment work, we basically took all of the things that we had created and we were like, what are the major themes here? And one of the major themes that we came across was this idea of identity and gender. And I ended up taking on, kind of this role of this person who is in flux, trying to discover themselves, who they are, what versus like what society expects them to be, specifically from the point of view as someone who was assigned female at birth. Yeah. And we ended up making this really beautiful piece about isolation and the way that social media kind of like head fucks all of us. I don't know if you're on here.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, but like kind of the head fucks that social media will give us, like especially with all of those body image issues and Absolutely. Ideas of identity. And we made this really cool piece where I'm like talking to myself, and we used this text that was originally supposed to be spoken by like a god-like creature. So we played a lot with this idea of like of divinity, and like especially like divinity as it is related to queerness.
Right.
So yeah, it was a really fun piece. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, I find that experiences with devised theater are obviously such a wide range and way, like there's so many different things you can do and all that good stuff, but like it's really awesome that you were able to create something so like personal to you within this devised piece, especially with working with so many others. So I just wanted to talk about that because I was like, that looked really, really cool and really like something very personal and special. So wanted to give a moment to it. But yeah, in particular, I know you're very interested in like collaborative and devised work as well as physical theater, but I'm curious what draws you to these styles.
So I was not interested in any of this stuff before I went to LIU Post.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I want to talk about it too.
I was like, I didn't even think it was an option really. I very much like came to school as like, I just want to act, sing, and dance. And like everyone at my school would always be like, you leave the school an artist. Mm-hmm. Like, we want you to like, we don't want you to just be a performer. We want you to be a creator. And I was always like, I'm good. I don't want it.
You're like, okay, I guess if I have to.
Exactly. And then my school is my program at Post is built on the Suzuki Method, which is a physical theater method devised by Tadashi Suzuki, and it was taken from a lot of different martial arts forms, and as well as kabuki theater and a lot of other East Asian practices. And Maria Porter, who founded our department like 30 years ago now, she actually just retired by her book.
Oh my gosh.
By her book.
No, honestly, deadass, send me a link to the book or whatever, and I'll put it in the description of this video. Like,
I will.
Amazing.
It's incredible. But she did I believe she did the city company program. So she worked with Anne Bogart, and then also like went and trained with Tadashi Suzuki, and then subsequently created her own acting method, excuse me, where she combined techniques from Anne Bogart's viewpoints, as well as the physical training and the aesthetics of Suzuki.
Gotcha.
And created this physical textual analysis, essentially. So my freshman year, all freshmen go through basic Suzuki, where you learn all of like the forms, essentially, and the aesthetics. And once you get to your junior year, that's when our program is split up into tracks. There's a Shakespeare track, and there's a physical theater track. And I was placed in the physical theater track, and went on to learn this incredible method that I feel like turned me into an actor. Like I truly didn't, and I feel like this is very true for a lot of neurodivergent queer people.
Yeah.
The Stanislavski method does not work for me. It just doesn't.
Because I'm sure it's a lot of like focusing on one thing that's all mind-based rather than like being able to just like live in your body. And I can imagine that's like a huge part of it.
That it really is. It's because we had a huge conversation about this at some point this year at school, where a lot of us were talking about how words can feel very limiting, because language is how we as humans quantify and qualify our experiences so that we can communicate about them. But in using language to describe something, you take away a lot of the nuance that can't be spoken. So I really felt like that's why this method works so well for me, is because it's truly like, okay, I'm looking at a piece of text. What is an image? What is a memory that I have? What is a song that is like connected to this piece of text for me? And now, okay, how does that live in my body with like the rules of composition from viewpoints and with some of the Suzuki aesthetics attached to it? It all
it makes me think of, and I feel like I quote this all the time, but I never remember who originally say it, but it's the idea that like when words aren't enough, you sing, and then when music isn't enough, you dance. And I think that really speaks to the like whole thing that you were saying of like language can only go so far until like it's like, okay, but how do I physicalize this? How can I express it in that way? Because more often than not, like you're going to be able to express more that way than anything else. And I'm just like curious, and you don't have to like go super crazy into it. So many people don't necessarily even know like Suzuki, and you were starting to explain it a little bit. Are there any particular like philosophies or thoughts that stand out about Suzuki Method?
Yeah, so I would say that some of the more important aesthetics, at least to me, are the idea of performance energy always. So it's this idea of like whenever you go into a space, whether it's rehearsal, whether you're doing something on your own, whether it's class, that you are committing to the work you're doing as if you are in front of an audience full of people. So it's like this idea of like never, and not to say like don't mark or things like that. Like obviously physical safety is important. But it's just this idea of like committing yourself and your energy super fully to everything you do. And the other one I would say is the idea of the God of perfection. This was really helpful for me because it's like an external source of it's almost like putting your inner critic outside of yourself, if that makes sense. The idea of the God of perfection is that they sit somewhere in the room, and they just, without judgment, measure how much performance energy and commitment you are giving to a certain thing. So it's essentially like a physical manifestation for your outside eye. And I feel like a lot of the times, at least I've seen in my program, sometimes people can be like, oh, your professor is your God of perfection, or they make that like a judgmental thing. But for me, it's very much like just something that it can just be like, hey, correct your form a little bit. Hey, you can give more right now. Like give a little bit more. Like it's just it's a lot easier than that coming from within you, because I think we are always our harshest critics. So putting it like on the wall outside of me has been really helpful.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And like you telling me about all this, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna go look up like Suzuki Method after this. Like I'm curious and I want to know more about it, because I think that is a really cool way of going about that. And like I think it sounds very healing in a way for an actor. And I think that's really an important philosophy. And like, I'm like, wow, I'm like mind blown by this, but that's really, really awesome.
No, it's very interesting, and it's very based. I would say it's very meditative. It's like, it's extremely rigorous and physical. Like, if you ever look up videos of like Suzuki stomping, like we literally like stomp around a room for 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And like, you know, there's like, we do crazy stuff. But I would say like one of the other big things is that the struggle, one of the other big ideas in Suzuki, I should say, is that the struggle of the actor and the struggle of the character are both visible in a performance. So a lot of like the physical forms are essentially teaching you how to struggle, and then how to put an image of something that you are fighting for, that you want, in front of you. That's also like a major aesthetic. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. And it's so cool because I feel like Suzuki Method isn't necessarily one that I've gotten to know of or hear of more. It's always like the Stanislavski, the Meisner, and things like that. So it's cool to hear about a completely different perspective that actually sounds brand new, as opposed to like a small variation on something else. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And so you also have a very strong dance background. And I know that you've done lots of ballet, but what all styles have you done?
Oh my God.
Do you do?
Okay, I have done jazz, tap, rhythm tap, hip hop, contemporary, modern, lyrical, point, ballet. Oh my God, what else? Acro.
All the different things. Do you have any particular favorite or preferred style these days?
I think modern. Just because essentially, like, with all of my training in Laban and Suzuki, I've been very much marrying these ideas of like physical theater meets dance, which I feel like lives in a very modern dance type of world already. So yeah, I would say that's my favorite.
Totally. No, that makes 100% sense. And honestly, that's where my brain was kind of like going in terms of like, I wonder what they're going to say. But yeah, no, it's cool. And I think that definitely makes sense with what we've been talking about, like physical theater and all that good stuff. And because you sent me a little reel, we're going to just watch a little bit of your dancing.
Yeah.
Such a great dance reel. Such a great dance reel. I also love that some of those clips are like very, very recent, like from like you posted on Instagram recently, a longer version of that one video. So it's fun to see it like so updated and full of all the different like styles and like variations you've done and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's been really funny making my reels because I truly look like 3 different people in a lot of my videos.
The hair does the most in terms of that, but yeah, no, it's really awesome to see like all those different facets of you like coming together in that way and being like, this is me as a performer, you know?
No, it is like cool to like be able to see my journey. like, even if it's, I don't know, I was like making my website recently and I like put up some pictures and they were like, one of my friends was like, you might have to like mark who you are in this photo because it just does not look like you anymore.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair and reasonable. And now that we sort of got on that subject a little bit, this might be a little bit of a hard transition, but that's okay. You've recently gotten to intimacy direction.
Yeah.
And I believe that this field is absolutely so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important. It's so new, but also it's been necessary for so long. So I'm curious, how did you personally get involved in that work?
Sure. So honestly, there was like a really upsetting incident that happened in my program where there was a production going on that had an intimacy director.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a production that that had a lot of intimacy on stage, and there was an actor in the company that just decided to make everyone uncomfortable and do a lot of shitty things to a lot of people. And like, I'm not going to go super into it just because
that's okay. Yeah.
Not my story.
Yeah.
But it, I was seeing all of this happen. I was seeing all of my friends like really suffer at this production, and there was an intimacy director present.
Yeah.
But it was simply because of the way the school was working, the way the faculty decided to handle it, that he was allowed to like continue with this production like much longer than he should have, and like things just kept. It was just a bad situation, and I moved off campus the next year and moved in with someone who had started doing intimacy direction themselves and learning all about it because they were a part of this incident.
Right.
And that was the way that they like wanted to cope, essentially, was by like learning how to fix these situations in the future. And I would talk to them about it, and it just seemed so necessary for so many types of people. Like you talk to any actor and there is that moment when they had to do their first stage kiss.
Yeah.
And they're terrified and their director's not going to help them at all. Their director's like, just go for it. And it's uncomfortable and no one knows what to do. And the language that we use around intimacy is so vague. Like, what does be more sexy mean? Or like, how do you qualify, like,
when choreography, quote unquote, changes every night because it wasn't established in the first place, and like lines of consent change, and maybe an actor is less comfortable with something one night than they were the previous. Those things have to be established,
Exactly. And like, I'm also a person that has dealt with a lot of sexual trauma. And so I have a lot of like physical triggers. And I started learning about this, and I was like, this is so important for people like me with PTSD. This is so important for trans people. This is so important for everyone in this industry. Like, everyone benefits.
Absolutely.
Even the production team. Like, if you're doing the only show I've intimacy directed on is Spring Awakening, and that's a
big show to be intimacy directing on.
Yes. But I remember like getting to have conversations with like my production team and being like, hey, we are choreographing this scene today, or we are running this scene today. Do you feel comfortable being here? Do you like, just so you know, you can button out, you can tap out at any time if you need to. It just makes it so much more accessible for everyone in the room.
Well, and I also, like from experiences that I've seen with intimacy directors as well, also offering for the actors themselves who are like learning the choreography, being that we are just now like rehearsing or establishing this choreography, we will be the only ones in the room that day. And like extra actors and things like that do not have to be there to set up this choreography. And I think both of those things, for both the people observing and the people being involved, like those kinds of like saying like, hey, this is all consent for everyone. Like, everyone involved we're trying to take care of. It's not just the people on stage. I think that that's a really amazing way to look at it as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, even me as the intimacy director on the show, like I was choreographing something and it really triggered me for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So I buttoned out, and like tapped out and like stepped out of the room, and I was like, literally everyone benefits here. Like,
absolutely.
And I feel like so many times when like emotions like that come up, we're told to use it,
right,
and to then put ourselves in further like harm's way. And
yeah. And so kind of dialing back to the beginning of like this role and this title, how would you describe in like the most basic terms like what an intimacy director does?
Sure. So an intimacy director essentially uses excuse me, non-loaded language, or desexualized language in order to create repeatable choreography that lives within the boundaries of all of the actors that are participating. So essentially, there are a couple different things in intimacy direction that go into choreography. One is level of touch. So there's 3 levels of touch. One is like skin or tracing. Then the next one is muscle level touch. So that's a little bit firmer. Bone level touch. Destination, which is where the actual physical contact is happening. And oh my goodness. It's been so long since I've given the spiel.
No, that's okay. It's not a test either. It's so don't stress about anything like that.
Yeah, but destination counts. So like duration.
Right.
Kissing is its own thing. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but essentially an intimacy director is there to make sure that choreography is repeatable and that it lives within everyone's boundaries. And also that we're using language that is tangible. So, if a director looks at you and says, I want you to walk across the stage to him, but be more sexy. Like, what does that mean? Right. Sexy is different for everyone. Everyone has their own preferences. So it's so much more concrete for me to say, can you walk across the stage, putting more weight in your hips and moving them at more of a figure 8? While like making sure that we're like opening up our chest as we're walking. It's so much easier for actors to then ask more specific questions or to say, hey, actually, that doesn't work for my boundaries. Is there any way we could change it to this? It's just more tangible and concrete.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to that repeatability. It's like if it's just this like if it's like this like essence, then it's like, okay, how does one do that? But when it, like you say, when it's a literal like thing, tangible thing, that just makes it so much easier for everyone involved. And I'm curious, are there like any misconceptions? And I'm sure there are. Are there any common misconceptions that people have about what intimacy directors do and what their role is in the rehearsal room?
I think that there's a lot of fear that like intimacy directions are there to like police your process or to make your life harder. And that's like the exact opposite of what an intimacy director is here for. And, so in a rehearsal room, you already have like your stage manager is kind of supposed to be like your liaison between your actors and your directors. The intimacy director is simply your advocate for your actors. And they are there to make sure that everyone is safe, not just the actors. Like I was saying, like this applies to like production team, and anyone that's working on the show. But I think like, the biggest misconception is that like intimacy directors are there to like ruin the fun or take the spontaneity out of acting. And it's like, no, when actors have something that is concrete, that is memorizable, that gives them the freedom to then act.
Absolutely.
Instead of just sitting there like, oh God, I have to do this kiss now. Oh my God, I don't even know. Oh,
because then you're falling out of character and you're not able to like do the scene. Like this is just you and yourself, and that just like so much like not fun stuff on the inside. And I 100% agree that that's a huge misconception. And like one that it's good to talk about and to make clear, like, no. And I think one that I've also seen as well is that like it doesn't have to be a show that is like quote unquote about sex, like Spring Awakening, for there to be an intimacy director. There could just be like a scene that has kissing or these like kind of intimate touch or whatever. It doesn't have to be a scene that's or a total play that's about that. There can just be like a section, and an intimacy director helps.
Yeah. I think too, something that needs to be more normalized is like having an intimacy director on set for just shows that have like difficult content. Like they might not even have any physical touch, but like if you're doing a show, like I'm trying to think of a really rough one. I don't know, even like Rent. Like that's really hard subject matter for a lot of people. It's
absolutely
really triggering content, or like 448 Psychosis, like some of these like newer plays that have to deal a lot with like mental illness that don't necessarily have like any physical interaction, but it's really difficult subject matter. And people need to be able to set boundaries on their bodies, but also, you know, their minds. And if, you know, someone calls you a bitch in a play, you should be able to be like, hey, can we not use that until we go to performances, because that's really triggering for me. Like there are just so many ways that this can really help people advocate for themselves.
Yeah, and like something that just came to mind with you saying that, like granted, this is a play that's literally about sex, but Slave Play would be a fantastic example of how an intimacy director is inherently necessary, not just because of like the physical touch that is involved in that show, but also like the content in terms of language and things like that can cross a lot of lines personally for actors, and it's important to have those kinds of things. And so I'm also curious, because with your like work in dance and choreography, how has that influenced your work as doing intimacy direction?
I feel like it has just like added so many tools to my toolbox.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I have, at this point, like I have, you know, the rules of composition from Viewpoints. I have Suzuki aesthetics. I have, you know, Laban efforts and all of that great stuff. And then I also have dance language. And all of this gets to kind of come together in intimacy direction. And you know, in any sort of physical work I do, but it's so nice when I'm choreographing something and maybe I give an instruction that is specifically in like the intimacy direction language, and maybe that doesn't work for someone, and someone's like, I don't understand what you mean by that, could you explain it in a different way? And I just have like a big toolbox full of different ideas that they could be familiar with. I could say like, are you familiar with the Suzuki Method? Are you familiar with Laban efforts? Okay, you're familiar with Laban. Great. We want this to be more of a molding right now. We want this to be like sustained time, you know, like things like that. It just creates a larger arsenal, I feel like, to be able to tackle problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even like talking about like duration, like using counts and things like that. Like even so, like things like that, I'm sure is like a wonderful way. Just again, expands like that toolbox of like, okay, how can I communicate this thing and make sure we're all on the same page?
Yeah.
And so then a question from Eli Rose. How does your experience as a trans person play into your passion for intimacy work?
Yeah. So I recently like was in Hedwig. You read my bio.
Yes.
And while I was in that show, I was dealing with someone very close to me that I'd recently come out to, and they were saying some very transphobic things to me, unfortunately. And I was having to deal. The way we did Hedwig was we had split up the character into the different times in her life. And I was playing Hedwig post surgery. So I sang Angry Inch and like a chunk of Wig in a Box. And it was really heavy material that happened to very directly coincide with what was going on in my life at that moment.
Absolutely.
And the availability of having Button, and I don't know if everyone in the audience would know, but Button is a word that you can say, or you can also do double tap or double clap in order to signify that you need to take a step back and that you need some sort of assistance. And I was able to use that cue for myself when it was becoming too much, when I couldn't go to rehearsals, or when a scene was just too emotional for me that day and was going to be like crossing a boundary. Trans people, especially in this industry, face so much more discrimination from all facets of their life. And so we have a lot more triggers. And not only talking about like triggers, but talking about intimacy direction is super big on using that deloaded language. And that also includes not then gendering a lot of the things that we would normally say. So like my staging sex book, it doesn't say, it doesn't denote certain body parts as male or female or anything like that. It just says internal and external sex organs, which is also like a huge leap, I feel like, in this industry.
Absolutely. That's a really great way of using that kind of language.
Just as trans people in general, this industry is really hard to navigate. And I'm saying that as a very like privileged white trans person. It's so different for trans people of color, I'm sure. But having like extra tools in order to be able to advocate for ourselves is so important.
And I think that makes total sense, and being able to say I know how to advocate for other people, and like being able to advocate for oneself and other people must feel also really empowering in learning more about intimacy direction. And obviously being a queer person, of course, has influenced the theater you want to create. And I know you're incredibly passionate and interested in transness in theater. And we were starting to talk about it a little bit with playing Hedwig. And apart from the really frustrating and like emotional parts of it, what was that experience like for you of being able to play like not neurodivergent, a queer character in terms of gender like that, because so few unfortunately exists in the musical theater canon?
So I don't think that I should ever play her again. She's like, just because like that is a role for a trans femme person, and like that is not my experience. In an educational environment, it was what it was. I loved it though. It really like was one of those moments where I was like, wow, representation is so important. And like I don't even think that Hedwig herself would like identify all the way as like a trans woman. Like her sense of gender is not in like a cis, like it, or not, I wouldn't say in a stereotypical type of way. Like she doesn't view femininity in the same way that like I feel like a lot of like cis women would, or like it's just very different. But getting to play this like kind of unhinged, like just badass punk rocker, which like I did not sing pop rock like a year before that. Like
that's so funny to me.
Literally, I changed voice teachers halfway through my college career, and I went to mine and I was like, no one will cast me because I can't sing pop rock, help. And then I like did Hedwig the next semester. But no, the representation was really important, and it did make me feel like very seen as a trans person. Even though like my experiences are so different from like what a trans femme person would experience. it just like, it made me really happy, especially because Hedwig was like a big part of my queer awakening.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember talking about Hedwig with you like all the way back at Broadway Con, you know, like as silly as that sounds, but like it's true, you know? Like we met Lena Hall that weekend.
We did meet Lena Hall. Oh
like,
my God.
Yeah, like I remember these things. Like it's crazy to think about. Like that's such a crazy full circle moment in that way.
Yeah. No, I do remember like going to see Hedwig and watching Lena Hall on stage and being like, I want to do that. Like that is my dream role. And, you know, cut to like 6 years later. And
Yeah.
it's because I kind of wanted to look like a boy.
Oh my gosh, that's so special. And I'm so happy that you were able to have that experience in an educational setting too.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, so many trans and queer people don't get those experiences in theater until they're like outside of college or things like that. And so I think that's incredibly special that LIU Post did Hedwig and you guys got to do that and experience that. And I could, correct me if I'm wrong, you did something last night, correct? At 54 Below?
2 nights
Or was that
ago.
2 nights ago? Okay.
Yeah, it was in Alone, which is a new musical by Dean Tyler Kay. And it's about basically the idea of like you never really know people. There are people that you pass every day and you'll never know their stories, but they have full lives and relationships. And it was really, really cool. We have another performance on July 7th. We have lots of tickets available if anyone wants to come.
Amazing. Yes. Give me the link for that. I'll throw it below as well.
Good. Yeah. But that was my 54 Below debut. So
how exciting. That must have been so cool to like perform because like that venue is so like we all look up to that venue so highly. And so I can imagine making your debut there felt so special.
Oh my God, no, it was crazy. I've seen all the YouTube videos and like, you know, watched all those performances and I was like, oh my God, I'm up here. Ah!
And then in terms of also like other exciting projects, I know that you have joined the company of Shot for Shot, and you have a performance coming up on July 9th, correct? Am I correct on that?
I think my next one is July 2nd, so this
July 2nd.
Saturday.
Amazing.
We're doing Top Gun. So it's at the Chalet Lag Tavern in Queens.
Amazing. Yeah. What is it and how did you get involved?
Yeah. So Shot for Shot is oh my God, what's the tagline? Is a movie game with a drinking problem or something. It's a drinking game with a movie problem.
There we go.
Essentially, we take movie scripts. We cast ourselves in them. We're all cast by Leah Evans, who runs the group, and then we just like come up with a bunch of drinking rules for the movie, and the cast and the audience gets drunk together as we go through the script. Leah Evans was actually my director for an improv show I did at Post. We did a full-length, hour-long improvised show, which was one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And when I turned 21, it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I emailed her, and I was like, Leah, as a birthday present, could I please guest star in Shot for Shot? And I just started doing like some Zoom Shot for Shots, and then I submitted to like do my first in-person season, and they said yes. So
that's so awesome. That's so awesome. Congratulations.
Thank
and also
you.
That sounds like an absolute blast.
It's so fun. I think it's like really important to do art that is just for me and for fun. And
yes.
That is my like, this is just a good time, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely so important. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because with that, we've kind of like come to the end of this episode, but where can people find you like on social media and things like that?
Oh God, I just recently changed all my handles.
That's okay.
I'm on Instagram at Lavender Logan Kelley. I also have a website. If you look up Logan Kelley 307, it's a Wix site. I don't have a domain yet. But yeah, hopefully more exciting things to come.
Absolutely. And people, go follow them there and you'll see all the amazing things he's up to. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Lora_Marjoram and my website, www.loramarjoram.com. That took me forever to get my domain name. So like, don't worry, don't stress. Use that Wix site, use it proudly. You can find the show on Instagram at Overtures Show. You can also find it on Apple Music and Spotify. Go check that out. I've been like slowly going through the back catalog and editing everything. So go follow. I'm releasing them at an insane rate. So please go check them out. And then of course, if you're here on the YouTube, congrats, you found it. Hooray. This is where we do it. So go subscribe, follow those kinds of things, because then you can set notifications for upcoming episodes. In general, I post like the upcoming episodes, pick and bio. You can submit questions to my guest on the Instagram. So that's where you'll find the most information. But with all that, my next stream, don't know yet. We're currently scheduling. It's that time of year that everyone gets really busy, and I might have to take like a week or two break just so that I can get people together so that we can do it, because everyone's doing amazing work and that's awesome. But Logan, do you have any final thoughts for viewers live and in the future?
Oh my God. So much stuff is happening right now. Go donate to an abortion fund if you can. If not, if you have the time, volunteer your time. Abortions affect more people than just women. Trans people are going to be affected by this. And they are coming for queer people next. So support your trans friends, support your queer friends. We need it right now.
Absolutely. Honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you for saying that. But with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And have a good one, everyone. Bye.